Hello everybody, my name is Joan Simon and I'm the volunteer coordinator at the San Jose Peace and Justice Center. The San Jose Peace and Justice Center was founded in 1957, so we are celebrating our 67th birthday this year. Please check out our calendar at sanjosepeace.org, which lists the events that we have at the center and the surrounding area. Bathrooms are down the hall, the last store on your left. So tonight, we have the pleasure of hearing from Stephen Zeltzer and Lisa Milos in a discussion about protecting community media, labor, Palestine, and the threat of fascism. Stephen has a podcast called Work Week Radio, now on SoundCloud. Steve is also a KPFA Local Station Board member. Welcome to the center, Lisa Milos. Lisa is a UCSF University Professional and Technical Employees, which is UPTE member. She is also a member of UPTE Members for Palestine.
And I'm also an LSB member of KPFA.
Lisa is also a KPFA Local Station Board member. Woo! So after they speak, we will also play a recorded message from Fadi Saba, the California Teachers Association Chapter President, CTA Luther Burbank Association School District.
I think San Jose is a very important area, and unfortunately, the techno-fascists who reside here are playing a very dangerous role in the United States and internationally. So I think that that's one of the issues that KPFA and Pacifica have to focus on, the danger of fascism.
That's right.
That's very important, and there's been very little reporting on what's going on in San Jose, and that's one of the reasons we're running, because we believe that there should be a San Jose News Bureau, a South Bay News Bureau, where there should be regular reporting. I mean, there are over 1 million people in San Jose. This is a very important area to cover, and there are people who listen to KPFA, but they're not getting news from the South Bay.
That's right.
And that's a very serious question. Why not? Why not? And that's one of the reasons our slate Rescue Pacifica was formed, to rescue Pacifica and make KPFA and Pacifica a relevant network, a relevant station. And that means that we have news bureaus around the region. We have a North Bay News Bureau, Central Valley News Bureau, a South Bay News Bureau, where we have journalists who can do regular reporting. And there used to be a journalist here at the San Jose Peace Center from KPFA, and that disappeared. But there are other journalists in the South Bay who could actually contribute news, independent news that you're not going to get on corporate media. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about working class people's radio in San Jose, which is very important to the people of the South Bay. So our slate, Rescue Pacifica, has fought for transparency and democracy. At KPFA, they collect a lot of money, millions of dollars, but we, on the local station board, never really get a financial report only a few days before. So imagine that. We have the responsibility of looking at the financial report. It's only presented to us 3 days, and then we have to vote on it. So we don't have, there's no finance committee, there's no opportunity to look at the books, where the money's going, and we even asked how many employees there are. We couldn't get a figure.
Wow.
This is for the business manager and manager. They can't give us a figure on how many employees there are at KPFA. Something is fishy, in our view, if you can't even get that kind of report. The other thing is we are in favor of a program council. We think that there should be community people, staff, and management together talking about the programming. Right now, on KPFA, they're running programs like Ian Masters, and over and over again, 9 hours a week. Tom Hartman, who's a warmonger.
Yes.
Tom Hartman said, actually, that if you support a ceasefire, you support Hamas. This is Tom Hartman.
Shame.
Now, I mean, Pacifica was founded for peace.
That's right.
It wasn't founded for war and the war machine. And unfortunately, the people that run KPFA and Pacifica think that they have to have these warmongers on the radio. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And I think the listeners have to make their voices heard in this election, that they want to go in another direction.
Woo.
That's very important. That we go in a direction And I think that one of the latest things, and Lisa will also be speaking, is they want to change the bylaws. Even though the membership twice and the staff have voted against a bylaw change, they want to allow themselves to appoint, if somebody leaves the board, they want to appoint somebody who hasn't even run. So they won't even have runner-ups who actually take the time to run. And we think that's wrong. If you take the time to run, if you get on the list, you should be able to get on the board. That shows you're serious about KPFA. But they reject that, and they want to appoint their cronies and their friends. And they're basically rubber stamps. An example of the rubber stamps. We've been fighting to free Julian Assange. We introduced a motion at the KPFA board to free Julian Assange. They voted it down. They voted it down and said, we can't take political positions. They said programmers can take positions, but we can't take political positions. Now, I mean, a radio station that talks for democracy and free speech radio, and you can't take a position to defend Julian Assange. There was also a resolution to support Frank Sterling, who was a journalist, a Native American journalist, who was covering the actions of the police, the Antioch police, and he was attacked by the police and beaten up. And he has a program at KPFA. He's a journalist. We passed a motion that they called for the dropping of the charges. They refused to pass a motion calling for the dropping of a charge of their own journalist. Imagine that. A journalist who works at KPFA is attacked by the police, and one of the board members, Sharon Adams, said that the police were right. She read a newspaper published by the right wing, Chevron, these big companies, that said that he was in the wrong, and that's what she was taking her view from. And she's on the board. She's running right now on the KPFA board, Sharon Adams. So these are the kind of people that they have. And the last, we have two others. We passed a motion, or we introduced a motion on condemning the genocide in Palestine. We tried twice to get it to the board. They don't want to even have meetings. They have meetings every other month, and they're only 2 hours, and they try to push them through so that they don't have discussion. They don't have to. I mean, it's autocracy that they have there. And so we tried to have a discussion on that. They voted that down. And we were able to fortunately, the chair allowed a discussion. That's unusual. To actually have a discussion. You can see that on our website, Rescue Pacifica. They had a discussion. And all these people, I support the Palestinians, but we can't support this motion.
Oh my God.
I mean, can you imagine that with this genocide? Now, if it was Jews, if it was Jews who were being massacred like that, they would pass a motion. But because it's Palestinians, well, we can't pass a motion. It really is, in my view, despicable. It's in contradiction to Pacifica. This is a massacre of hundreds of thousands of people, and it's a genocide, and Pacifica was founded on it. So the last point I want to make is that they have also filed a complaint. They're against WPAI, which they blame for all the causes at Pacifica. The problem is WBAI. Well, WBAI has radical programming, and it has its issues as well, but actually they shut it down in the middle of a fund drive to take it over. And Sabrina Jacobs actually prevented the WBAI delegates from even voting on whether or not it should be shut down. That's what they were trying to do. And that was why it was illegal. They had an illegal shutdown. They actually, in my view, when they raided that station, they should have been criminally prosecuted because they were shutting down the station illegally. This is who they are. And they defended, and KPFA, unbeknownst to the membership, spent $80,000 on lawyers defending the shutdown of WBAI. They sent $80,000, the previous manager, Quincy McCoy, sent $80,000 to the lawyers in New York to keep WBAI shut down.
Oh my God.
So this is, and they never reported that to the members. We also they also supported the previous executive director who was involved in this, and he sued in arbitration Pacifica, and they argued in favor of him, and he won a $300,000 settlement. And the manager of KPFA actually supported that law, that suit. She supported in favor of the executive director, previous executive director. It cost $300,000. We didn't even know KPFA had $300,000 stashed away. But the government came to take the money. They found $300,000, and they took it. No explanation of the membership, and they blamed WBAI for the reactionary things that they did. And so we are fighting a new bylaw proposal that they have, which is going to be a vote this coming Saturday. We ask you to call in to the station and speak up and say what you feel should be done. We need worker voices. We need people voices on KPFA. There used to be many call-in programs. Right now, with the rise of fascism, we need people to call in. We need discussion and debate. We need education. That's not happening at KPFA. They're afraid of the listeners, really, is what it is. And that's why we're running. That's why we have some great people on our slate. We want you to reach out. We brought some flyers for our slate, and we think that this is a great opportunity to have a discussion debate. One of the things, when you complain to the FCC, the danger is the FCC is now doing monitoring of Pacifica, and they're imposing new rules on Pacifica. And maybe one of the reasons they canceled the fund drive at KPFA. They say they got a bequest, but why would you cancel a fund drive when the network is in dire financial straits? Think about that. Why would you cancel a fund drive?
When did they do
Something is no explanation. Very strange. They haven't said anything to us.
You mean summer fund drive?
Yeah, summer fund drive. They just canceled it. No explanation to us. They treat the LSB like they don't have to present anything. In fact, the coming board meeting, the manager's not even showing up. And that's part of the jobs of the manager to report to the local station board. He has contempt for the local station board. And these people who are on the board, the majority, are rubber stamps. Whatever he says, they go along with the manager. This is not the way we're going to transform KPFA. And we are in danger. Because if Trump takes power, and I don't support Biden, he's a war criminal, he's committed genocide, but if Trump takes power, they're going to use this complaint that these people, Sherry Gundelman and others, made to the FCC as a justification to shut down Pacifica. You can count on it, because these racists, these reactionaries and fascists, Turning Point USA, they're going to put them into government positions in the FCC, and then they're going to shut down things, close down debate, close down all discussion. That's what we're facing, and that's why this election and what's going on at KPFA and Pacifica is very important. So I want to welcome Lisa Milos, who's an activist, fighter, professional interpreter. She's with Upbeat Workers for Palestine, and she's been a strong voice, the strongest voice on the board, fighting for democracy and transparency.
Yeah, a lot of the things that Steve was mentioning, I'm pretty sure it comes out of left field for many people, because it's been for a long time, there's been this very false narrative that these groups that are in control of, or taking control of Pacifica and in control of KPFA have been sending to listeners. They have had control over mailing lists, so they've been able to send a lot of false narratives regarding how irresponsible Pacifica Network is, and I mean, a lot of issues. They have been actively pushing for KPFA to not continue to be part of Pacifica Network. Pacifica Network, for people that don't know this, is a network that started in the 1940s by pacifist Lou Hill, and it has a mission. The mission is an educational mission. It's a mission to present information that is not normally available to the public. It has 5 stations, including KPFA in Berkeley, WBAI in New York City, KPFT in Houston, WPFW in Washington, D.C., and KPFK in Los Angeles. Now, it also has 200 affiliates. The other stations, especially WBAI, happens to have more of a radical perspective. They present things that are really not available in other places. A lot of Julian Assange, for example, programming, Countdown to Freedom. Also, they have been exposing the FBI attack against the African People's Socialist Party. They're being called Russian agents and face imprisonment. And a lot of different, very, very good programming. And at KPFA, they even refuse to show electronic intifada, where in WBAI they do show electronic intifada. We still have flashpoints, thankfully, at KPFA. But as an LSB member, local station board member, the reason I got involved was when I found out that in October 2019, which coincidentally at the same time there was an uprising happening in Chile, which is my home, my mother's country, my home country. I'm Chilean American. And in October 2019, WBAI literally was being closed down by the executive director without any kind of support from the Pacifica National Board, which is the board of directors. the way that Pacifica is structured is that you have listener members and you have staff members, and the staff can be paid and unpaid staff. 70% of the work that's done at Pacifica is done by unpaid staff, people who are committed to the mission. And because Pacifica is a nonprofit, it doesn't have much money, it can't pay everybody, so there's a lot of people who are dedicated professionals and dedicated media activists who are committed to the mission of Pacifica and do programming on a regular basis. So 70% is done by unpaid staff. And so the listeners on the one hand and of each station and the staff at each station, what they do is they elect members to the local station board. And from those members in the local station board, we elect the Pacifica National Directors. In other words, they form part of the board of directors of the Pacifica Network. That kind of structure doesn't exist anywhere else in the media, in the media field. Least of all after Clinton passed the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which allowed for media conglomerate. So this is basically the last remaining terrestrial, independent, progressive, left radio network in the country. The last one. And it's so important that it was actually named in the Project 2025 as being one that needs to be eliminated by this next Trump. Of course, they think that they're funding it somehow or another, so they're saying to take away the funding. But Pacifica doesn't get government funding. That was part of the issues that was going on. Because in any event, WBAI, just for the record, it's true, WBA has a very high debt going on, more than $6 million. But when the trade towers came down, they lost their transmitter from the trade center. So the Pacifica National Board at the time, they negotiated a loan and a lease at the Empire State Building in order to have a transmitter. And that transmitter, that lease arrangement was a very bad arrangement. It allowed for 8% increase per year, which left, it allowed for 8% increase per year, which has continued to balloon and create like a snowball effect on the finances. And WBAI, in reality, has such an overhead that not even 5 stations combined would be able to cover that overhead that they have on a monthly basis. And so, because it's a network, it's really the responsibility of the entire network to be able to support each other. That's why you have a network, so you're more powerful, right? Well, instead of that, we've had members of the Paul Wellstone Democratic Club, okay, that have been actively trying to dismantle Pacifica, the Democratic Party. Why? Well, the Democratic Party does not want anything left of them, if they can be considered left, especially during election year. They have been promoting what's called the protectors, the KPFA protectors, who are the majority on the KPFA LSB, the same ones who voted down the resolution on Palestine. And then at the 75th anniversary for KPFA, they had Amy Goodman come and speak entirely about Palestine, but with no Palestinian speaker whatsoever. She spent the entire time talking about Palestine, but did not have any Palestinian speaker whatsoever. And during that same week, there had been scheduled a fundraiser for the 75th anniversary together with Middle East Children's Alliance, but that was canceled because, according to them, due to poor ticket sales. How is it possible that you can fill an event with Amy Goodman, and during the middle of a genocide, you can't fill an event? KPFA cannot fill an event and get enough tickets to support Middle East Children's Alliance during that same week? So I've been pretty active in denouncing this. In fact, the previous time that I was on the LSB, before, I was actually kicked off of the LSB by the majority of this LSB. I was kicked off the LSB, but then I was reinstated by the Pacifica National Board a few months later. And why was I kicked off? Was because I was denouncing the fact that Sherry Gendelman, who is running right now as in the staff elections, Sherry Gendelman presented a complaint to the Federal Communications Commission to try a petition to deny WBAI its license. I mean, if you really want to destroy Pacifica, you try to take away the license of what a very valuable license, by the way. And Sherry Gendelman was also, together with Donald Goldmacher, who's also a member of the LSB, together with Carol Wilfley, they have been basically and Christina Huggins and Andrea Turner and Sabrina Jacobs,
they have been involved directly in suing Pacifica under Jerry Gendelman's organization is called Pacifica Safety Net. They tried 4 times to sue Pacifica because they were insisting that the last bylaws amendment passed. It's true, it passed in the listeners aspect, but according to the bylaws, it has to pass in the 2 classes of voters, the listeners as well as the staff. And the staff voted against it. But guess what's going on now? Now, this next election, they're presenting illegally a motion to do an amendment changing the way members can actually get their runners-up in. They're destroying the runner-up system completely, which basically is the basis of having a single transferable vote system, is to have these runner-ups so that they would come up to the next level if there's any vacancies. But they're destroying that part. And why? Well, who's behind it? Jan Goodman is also a member of, not the Protectors, but she's a member of New Day, who's also been part of this, these lawsuits against Pacifica, which has been draining Pacifica of more than $600,000 during the time when they are they're losing money left and right, because there has been a lowering of listenership. There's less listenership. People are going more towards podcasts and things like that. But at the same time, this person, Jan Goodman, she's holding over the head of Pacifica this lawsuit, or the potential lawsuit, which is an attack on workers, because what she's trying to say is she's going to be burying Pacifica in paperwork and forcing Pacifica to prove that the voters, the staff members who voted in the WBAI election in 2021 for the referendum, that they need to prove now that they were actually workers. In other words, typical like poll tax, or almost like Jim Crow, politics, where you have to actually prove that you're eligible, or you were eligible retroactively. And so now they're trying to do this either by the court system, and now they have a majority control of the Pacifica National Board because of shenanigans they did at the last election we had. We had this last year, they decided not unanimously, they decided that they would extend their 6-year terms. And so when they extended the 6-year terms, basically we took them to court on that issue, there was Rescue Pacifica members who took them to court on that issue. And what instead happened was that the judge ordered an immediate election. Right? Because they had basically canceled the election. So, okay, the election happened, but they did shenanigans in that election. KPFK ended up, they ended up disqualifying a whole members of the KPFK listener station board. The only listener station board that had actually followed the bylaws and did not allow for the extension of the 6-year terms of the Pacifica National Board of LSB members. There's nothing in the bylaws that allows for an extension of your tenure as a member of the board of directors. There's nothing that doesn't happen. That's why you have an STV system, single transferable vote. You have runner-ups, and what they did was they ended up extending. So that's basically what we need to realize, is that all of this fight that's going on, and the way that they're trying to change Pacifica, they're trying to create self-designating boards, which was part of the bylaws amendments fight that happened. Creating self-designating boards typical of corporate boards. And it would change the entire character and the entire power that Pacifica has as being a really listener-sponsored and listener-run and staff-run organization, and a democratic organization. They did shenanigans also at the KPFT board as well, where they disqualified 4 people from even running, claiming that they didn't have enough nominations when they did. There was a lot of glitches with the website and all that kind of stuff. And the KPFK board, like I said before, was disqualified as well for actually following the rules and going against the PMB decision of extension of the term limits. And WBAI, now there's a direct attack against WBAI with this next lawsuit that's being sort of hanging over the head of Pacifica. But right now, the Pacifica is being handled, is being run by by New Day and by Protectors and Pacifica Safety Net. So we want to basically ask everyone to vote for the Rescue Pacifica slate. all the way down. We have a very, very good candidates, Dr. Rabab Abdul Hadi. I'm sorry, Abdul Hadi. She's a San Francisco State professor, member of California Faculty Association, who's a founder of the Arab and Middle Eastern Diaspora Studies and professor of ethnic studies. And she's been fighting for justice in Palestine for a long time and has been dealing with a lot of attacks by the president of San Francisco State University. We also have Virginia Browning, who's a former LSB member, and she also she's a co-chair of Standing Together for Accountable Neighborhood Development. Donna Carter is our current LSB and Pacifica National Board member, and she's anti-war, anti-racism activist, and she's actually a nurse as well, a former nurse.
What LSB stands for?
I'm sorry?
What LSB stands
The
for?
Local Station Board.
Oh.
Yeah. And we have Mikai Freeman, who's a former chair of the Berkeley Disability Commission and Systems Change Advocate at the Center for Independent Living. We have Felipe Messina, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBU member, and also a member of Modesto Cop Watch and work with Valley Improvement Projects. Phoebe Thomas, or previously was called Phoebe Sorgan, a former LSB member, Social Justice Committee Chair for the Berkeley Fellowship of Unitarian Universalists. And Pathma Venasithambi, former UC Berkeley staff member, software engineer, member of Jewish Voice for Peace. And Stan Woods, former ILWU Local 6 Executive Board member of the East Bay chapter, and also of the East Bay chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America, and member of Oscar Grant Committee Against Police Brutality. So we hope you can support our slate and ask everyone you know to support Rescue Pacifica slate. Thank you. Sorry, thank you. The voting is going to be August 15th. It starts August 15th and ends in September 30th. Yeah.
But you would have to register as of June 30th?
Well, yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that, yeah. In order to be able to vote personally in this election, you would have to have signed up, subscribed to kpfa.org as a donor and donate at least $25 per year in order to be able to elect anyone this election. But you can still join, and you can still, by the way, you get on kpftx.org, and there is a Zoom that you can join to, or call on the phone, to call at this next meeting that's going to happen July 20th between 11 and 1. They have a public comment period, and we hope that you join the public comment and give your opinions regarding these next basically power grab that's going to happen with this they're basically going to trying to get rid of the STV vote. And by the way, Frank Sterling, the single transferable vote system, it's ranked choice. And by the way, Frank Sterling, he's also he was also co-technical director of the First Voice Apprenticeship Program, which was eradicated by by the GM. The previous GM, Quincy McCoy, he created a parallel technical training program without the social justice component, which was called the AMP program, and he got funding for that and reduced the funding directly to the First Voice Apprenticeship Program, which was an award-winning program. It had a lot of people that had been involved in journalism and got involved in journalism through that and ended up getting Peabody Awards. And it's amazing. It's we tried to present a resolution to support him during the time, and Sharon Adams directly attacked him in a public meeting. She's a lawyer on top of it. So she attacked him in a public meeting saying he was at fault when he had a pending legal case against him. Okay? It's just astounding that they would call themselves progressive at this point, honestly. Yeah. Yes?
Aren't we past the deadline
For voting, yes, but you could tell all your friends, all of your friends who you think are supporters of KPFA or who subscribe to KPFA, just get a hold of them and let them know that you want them to vote the Rescue Pacifica slate, please. And call on the phone this Saturday, July 20th, because even if you're not a subscriber, you are a listener, so you should, subscribe, but then also, call in and let them know that we're watching them, because it's important that they realize that they can't continue to function like this in such an autocratic way. If anybody were to listen to any of the previous LSB meetings, you could see that the way they conduct the meetings is very undemocratic. First of all, Pacifica is the owner of the Pacifica is the network, so they're the ones that have the nonprofit status, right? So yes, every station has to pay for central services, but central services has not been paid by KPFA these past 2 years. They have not been paying into that. What they did complain about was, what the protectors complained about was the award of $305,000 that the marshals got a hold of, okay? How did that award happen? Well, Ed Vernil, he was the previous executive director who ordered the closing down of the WBAI station in October 2019. They terminated him, but it went to arbitration. But the arbitration basically agreed with Pacifica in the termination because he did not do that with board consent, right? But what he did was he sued through the arbiter for slander, because apparently somebody on WBAI said that he was probably sent there to close down WBAI to begin with. And what he said, I mean, that was not an official statement by anybody in the station, so it really did not have any bearing on slander, because it was just some program host that mentioned that. Normally you ask for a retraction and that's it, you know. But in this case, he didn't accept that, and it went straight there. And so he got an award for $305,000. The interesting thing is that the general manager of KPFA, Quincy McCoy, and Sabrina Jacobs, I believe, and Christina Huggins, they all testified voluntarily in favor of Vernil and against Pacifica. They being, some of them were actual members of the LSB, of the local station board. Christina Huggins was the chair of the local station board. And on top of it, the business manager, Maria Negrete, who doesn't hand us the financial documents 3 days in advance, she hands it to us like 1 day in advance, or the same day sometimes. She, and I'm going to get into trouble for saying this, but I don't care, honestly. But Maria Negrete, the business manager, when the lawyer for Pacifica was asking that the award be postponed because there were still some pending issues related to that same court case, she filled out a deposition saying no, she was against the postponement of the award. But it came to bite them in the butt, because the money that was taken was actually from a bank account that was from a KPFA bank account that at least I had never seen before, or in any of the financial documents. Who knows where that money came from? They say it was, you know, restricted funds or whatever, but the marshals took it, $305,000, and they go and they blame WBAI for that. They took, the money was taken primarily, you know, because of the level of complicity that the members of the LSB and the members of the protectors are having with those same people that are draining Pacifica with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, making it lose $600,000. And that's not including the $305,000, which KPFA, by the way, is asking Pacifica to pay it back. So it's a debt to pay it back to KPFA.
It's so sad to hear that there's a lot of corruption.
It's yeah, you could call it that. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. We're out here to try to get your support so that we can turn this around, you know. And I think we can turn this around if we, first of all, know the truth about what's been going on. And you could check rescuepacifica.net. And we have three members who are going to be termed out because they've already done their 6 years, and some of them have written articles. I've also written articles about this. And there's documentation. You can also check out pacificainexile.org. And there's a lot of documents there as well, court documents, things that cannot be denied, in other words. Their names are on it. The FCC complaint against WBAI was initiated by Sherry Gendelman. Donald Goldmacher was also involved in that. He was actually calling on the phone to New York trying to get people to sign on to that as well. Christina Huggins, who's also running now, Carol Wolfley, who's also running now, our opposition, they're basically, they're proud of what they're doing, unfortunately. Yeah.
But what does other networks like you
Oh, there's, well, rescuepacifica.net, which is our slate, Rescue, right. And then there's also Pacifica in Exile that has a lot of articles that you can look back, you know. And there's also pacificafightback.org, which is the organization that includes all the different members of the different stations that are fighting this power grab as well. Yeah.
So my last donation to KPFA was in December.
Oh, this past December. So then you can vote. Yeah, you can vote. Yeah, you can vote. Excellent. Every vote counts, believe me. You know, because we're a small organization. I mean, we're not highly funded. You know, so we count on people to vote. You know, and we go to the different events. We're embedded in the communities that we work with and we're activists in. You know, but there's been a lot of false narratives, and they've had control of the mailing list, and they've had control of the narrative for a long time, you know. And a lot of, unfortunately, some members, some staff members who have programs on KPFA, some of them don't want to be, you know, have any kind of repercussions on their time slots, you know. So they prefer to stay away from all this discussion.
One of the issues also is we want to have debates in carts of the people who are running. In the past, we've actually had to have protests at the station to say have YouTube have debates on the radio.
On the air.
On the air. So why shouldn't people be able to hear the candidates? The management of KPFA is adamant against that. They don't want the listeners to hear the candidates that are running. Yeah. In the past, they've had debates, they've had forums, they have questionnaires. They had one, and then they put it up on YouTube. But, you know, people should be able to hear it on the radio. They should be able to, they don't publicize it. These people are running, I would say, a COINTELPRO operation. They're running an operation to shut down KPFA and Pacifica. Why else would you go to the FCC to tell them to discipline WBAI? What kind of idiocy is that? That you would go to the federal government, knowing what the federal government is doing to corporatize radio, that you would go to them to clean up Pacifica. Only somebody who's a political operative would do something like that, and that's what they are. Going to the federal government to clean up Pacifica? What is the federal government going to do about Pacifica, especially if there are any programs criticizing the Democratic Party? Think about that. And if Trump comes to power, which he likely will, because of the political bankruptcy of the Democrats and the Genocide Joe, the first thing they will do is they will use that complaint by KPFA people, local station board members, to say we have to shut down Pacifica. We have to close it down. And you can be ready to have Pacifica shut down. These people are fascists. They have a program 2025. They mention Pacifica because they hate Pacifica. Pacifica and KPFA, despite our problems with it, is the only voice of Palestinians. Is the only voice that has programming questioning the government's policy, both the Democrats and Republicans. And that will end. So that's why this election is more than just about an election. It's more than just about KPFA and Pacifica. It's about free speech and making sure that we have a platform that people can listen to on the radio. Because the other medium, social media, can be controlled as well. Beta, Facebook, Twitter, all these Twitters now putting out racist, fascist material. These companies are using their control of the media to put out their political agenda. They're banning stuff on Palestine. Zoom and others shut down Rabab al-Jihadi's program, YouTube. So they are trying to shut down any independent voices. So that's why our struggle, Rescue Pacifica, is so important, because we have to keep this a strong network. And as far as they say, well, there's a financial crisis. Yes, there's a financial crisis when you have Ian Masters and when you have Tom Hartman over and over again on the air. You don't put on local voices. They could have a program called the South Bay.
Yeah.
People from the South Bay, housing issues. There's so many issues in the South Bay. Do you hear them on KPFA? No. Why not? But they've got 9 hours from Ian Masters. They don't want community programming. They don't want to have a community radio station. They removed my program, Work Week, the only labor show on KPFA. There's no labor show on KPFA. Can you imagine that? They call themselves community radio and they don't even have a labor show? Who are these people?
And it was
Who are these people? It was only a half hour a week, and they removed it. Quincy McCoy, he says, we got to go in new directions. And one of the reasons he may have said that is because on my program, I had people talking about the Histadrut and the Israeli Trade Union Federation and the AFL-CIO and their relationship. Yeah, we don't want to have that kind of programming on. So, in fact, that was the only time he actually came up to me and complained about my program. Is I had a professor on, Anthony Hall, who was actually a professor in Canada, a Native American, who was framed up by the ADL. They, unbeknownst to him, they put on his Facebook an anti-Semitic graphic. And then they had set up for the university to fire him. They said he's an anti-Semite for this anti-Semitic graphic, which was put on by the Zionists. And they used that manipulation to frame him up and fire him. But we're talking about the Zionists. We're talking about these companies, these tech companies who are using their technology against people and framing them up. And professors, Rabab Abdul-Hadi has been attacked at San Francisco State. You have Sang-Hae Gill at San Jose State, who's been attacked by the university here and suspended. I mean, there's a purge going on of academics who are critical of Israel and for the Palestinians. That's what's going on.
The president of Sonoma State.
President of Sonoma State was removed. So this is a very serious life and death issue that we're talking about. And again, the South Bay is an important community, and we would like somebody from the South Bay to run in the next election, if there is another election, frankly, with what's going on. But, we got to have voices from the South Bay. It's a large community. One of the problems with these people at the news department, particularly, is they are adamant not to do live coverage. When there was a Nazi rally 2 blocks from the station, they continued regular programming. Even ABC, NBC were covering it live, but they don't want to disrupt the programming. One of the things that we have been fighting for, when the Zim ship came, we had live programming, we fought for that. They don't believe in that. And that's how you're going to get listeners. You're going to get listeners by actual struggles that are going on. When people hear the voices, that's how KPFA became a powerhouse during the 60s. They covered the free speech movement live at UC. I mean, imagine that. That was in the 60s. They covered the free speech movement live, and we can't do that today on KPFA and Pacifica? What is going on? And another issue that we have, they're covering the Republican convention, but right now in Houston, people are without electricity. 2 million people without electricity. We have a station in Houston. Don't you think our network should be covering what's happening to the people of Houston? People are going to die and are dying because of not having electricity, the corruption of the power company, the reactionary governor who wants to bring back the Confederacy, who wants to allow a murderer out of jail who assassinated somebody in the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, we're talking, but these people at KPFA and Pacifica could care less that our own sister station faces a power problem, and also that we're not covering what is going on in Houston, which is important to all the working people. There's been a virtual blackout of what's going on in Houston. Why? Because it shows the corruption and bankruptcy of capitalism. They can't even keep the power on, and also climate. That's what's going on. This was a Category 1 storm. It knocked out the power for 2 weeks, and over a million people didn't have power. I'd say that's a serious issue. No, it was a Category 1. So actually, what's coming in this country, and be aware, is the hurricane system is just starting for the summer. There may be 3 or 4 catastrophic storms that hit Houston, Louisiana, Miami, that kill millions of people. Millions of people. If you don't have air conditioning, if you don't have power in Houston and in the South, you will die, especially seniors, people who have disabilities, people in nursing homes. This is an emergency, grade 1 emergency, but the Democrats and Republicans are not talking about that. They're not talking about preparing to protect people in the South, and that's something Pacifica should be taking up. We should be warning people, because neither parties want to confront a corrupt system run by billionaires. That's really what's going on. They don't want to challenge private control of the energy industry, private control of the utilities, which is destroying this country. Look at PG&E. I mean, the Democratic governor, Gavin Newsom, and this legislature, including legislators in San Jose, voted to allow PG&E to tax customers to keep Diablo Canyon open.
Shame.
Can you imagine that? Keep a broken nuclear plant open, give them over $1 billion? I mean, is this what we need? More nuclear plants in California and to raise it, and you're going to pay for it. We are paying for it. Again, is KPFA covering that?
No.
Are they covering the role of the Democrats in keeping this nuclear power plant open? I mean, it's dangerous.
Except for Dennis Bernstein.
Dennis Bernstein, some people have covered it. So, yes.
Are there any programmers we could contact and ask them to cover these issues?
Well, I mean, you should call Flashpoints, Hard Knock, Project Censored. You should call these programs. And the other thing is, contact the board, send letters to the board. We get the letters if you send letters. So if you want more programming from the South Bay, that should be an issue. It's an issue for me. I want to hear what's going on in the South Bay. Yeah, put it and put it on Indy Bay, indybay.org. You can write something on indybay.org. There's a South Bay section of indybay.org. Put that out there. The more media, the better. We have to build independent media.
And also, there's 2 staff members that are not listed on that thing who are also running with us, but the reason they're not listed is because only listeners can vote for listeners and staff can vote for staff. Anthony Fest is an LSB member, a local station board member for representing staff. He's also a producer of Project Censored, and also Miguel Antonio Perez, who's a very good Argentinian friend who has a program on KPFA called Voces del Pueblo, which is part of La Onda Bajita. And he also has a streaming radio program called Radio Flash, and he's a longtime radio activist as well, and he's from Argentina. So those are 2 staff members who are running as well.
If there were to be people here in the South Bay who would want to be volunteer journalists for KPFA to cover stuff here in the South Bay, how would they do that?
Well, you'd have to basically try to, you're going to have to vote for us to get more people on the KPFA LSB local station board so we can fight for that. You should also make your voices known to the general manager at the local station board. You should call during public comment and say, hey, we're here. Why don't you take it into consideration? There used to be the First Voice apprenticeship program that Frank Sterling had, right? Well, that was taken away. There's no longer, that doesn't exist anymore. So you could ask for that program to come back, Frank Sterling to be hired again for that. You know, there's a lot of things that have been taken away in terms of grassroots. You know.
And is there a way to get Mark Miracle off the evening news because he's horrible?
I think he's. I'm not sure, but there's. You could definitely give your opinion at the local station board meeting, and it's public comment. So, you know, you definitely should say, you know, this is, I'm very upset with him for this and this and that. And I agree with you. The news department sounds more like NPR, you know, and they continue to talk, you know, almost verbatim from the Newswire, you know, from AP Newswire almost, you know. They want to make it look as if it's factions. It's not factional politics. It's basically what interests are at play here, right? When you look at fighting going on, usually you have to look at whose interests are being served, who stands to benefit, who bene, like this, right? And what happened in 1999, unfortunately, I wasn't there because my mother had cancer at the time, so I was taking care of her. But I was watching it very closely, and I was, you know, in contact with people. And Mary Frances Berry, for people who don't know, she was a CPB, a Corporation for Public Broadcasting person who was trying to take over Pacifica. And that was one of the major things that led to the bylaws changes, the changes in the bylaws that changed the way Pacifica was actually elected and how it has a present board right now with 24 members. And there are 4 members that are elected from each station, you know, from each of the different stations that go in there, and there's a certain number of staff members, and then there you have two representatives of their affiliate members. So yes, it is large, but there's 5 stations to deal with, right? And you do have to have many different voices. So one of the proposals that our opposition has been trying to do is to reduce that 24-member to a 12-member board and self-select. In other words, those 12 members being the ones to select the future members coming in. More or less similar to what Trump did with with so-called President Guaidó, where he hadn't even run for president, but he was chosen as president by Trump, right? Okay, this is the same thing. You know, you're bypassing the single transferable vote system to just choose somebody among your friends, and you're going to, you know, have people voting for you. That's it. You know, you're. So, you know, I know that there were some members, in fact, Sharon Adams as well, it seems like used to be part of the so-called Save KPFA crowd, if I'm not mistaken. There's all the different names that came up, different iterations of names that came up throughout the years. But if you look at who is proposing what, those who are trying to propose these bylaws changes and who were on the opposite position of us in terms of the bylaws, trying to this STV thing is only one part of it. There was a whole range of changes which would have reduced the representation of listeners as well as staff. And those who have been draining Pacifica through lawsuit after lawsuit and trying to disregard completely the vote of the staff. And now, Jan Goodman, who is from the KPFK crowd, from Hollywood, she's one of those big big deal fundraising persons who gets all Hollywood personalities to come to her home, and she gets money and all that kind of stuff. That's that's her thing. Democratic Party, okay. Well, yeah. No, not related to Amy Goodman. No. But she is the one that is calling into question the vote of the staff at WBAI. So it's, like I said before, it's almost like when you, and this is retroactive to the 2021 election, and so she's basically going to be imposing this discovery, legal discovery on Pacifica to try to help have them prove that they were staff members when they voted. That is ridiculous because, like I said, 70% of the producers are unpaid staff. Steve, when you were unpaid staff at KPFA, when you had the program Work Week Radio, did you fill out any employment timesheets? Were there any timesheets that you filled out? Because there was no employment law being broken. If you're unpaid, you're not violating any employment laws if you're not filling out any timesheets because you're not getting paid, for God's sakes. So it's absolutely ridiculous. It's basically a power play by a corporate lawyer, and she's a lawyer, by the way, Jan Goodman, to try to inundate Pacifica with paperwork and try to pass this so-called settlement agreement about the bylaws surreptitiously, bypassing the will of the listeners and of the staff, and bypassing and violating the bylaws. Now, one thing I'd like to say something. The Pacifica National Board, as board of directors, everybody who knows how board of directors have directors' insurance, right? If they can't be held personally liable for decisions they make as board of directors. But there's an exception. If they knowingly are violating the bylaws of an organization, then they can be held personally liable if there's a lawsuit that comes as a result of this violation of this attempt of a power grab right now. So those, and one of the KPFA Pacifica National Board Directors who's part of the KPFA LSB, Zach Caldevier, is one of the people from KPFA who signed and submitted the motion to change that aspect of the bylaws. Zach Caldevier is basically a PR hack from the Democratic Party who tries to present himself as a progressive. He wrote an article on Palestine recently, but he voted against the resolution on Palestine that we presented in March. He voted against it. Zach Caldevier. He's also running, by the way. So please, don't vote for him.
If you think about the population of the South Bay, over 1 million people, and there are people who listen to KPFA. A lot of people don't know about KPFA, but if they had a bureau here and they had program news from the South Bay, you would get more listeners. You would get more supporters. They would say, oh, KPFA is relevant to what my life is in the South Bay. And as I said earlier, especially with the rise of fascism, because the ideology of the techno-barons, Musk and Peter Thiel and Larry Ellison, these people are fascist. They're techno-fascists. They believe they should be in charge of everything and control us. And they're throwing a massive amount of money out now to support Trump. And they want a dictatorship. They want a fascist government. And that's what they're talking about. Now, people do not understand what that means. Recently, Trump had a campaign rally in Detroit. There was virtually no protest against it. Speaking to Turning Point USA. Turning Point USA is run by this guy named Charlie Kirk, who is a fascist. They get money billionaires. And one of the things this organization does is organize to attack professors all over the country who are critical of Israel. Target them. They have thousands of members. And what Trump has said is, with Charlie Kirk, is that they're going to put his people into government positions. They're going to remove civil servants, and they're going to put in fascists into these government agencies. That's what they're saying. They're openly saying it. They don't hide it. They're openly saying it. Now, is that being spoken about? Is that being discussed on KPFA? Are they talking about the danger of fascism? Are they talking about the fact that in Los Angeles, at UCLA, when there was a peaceful encampment, the Zionist and Brave Boys, fascist groups together, physically assaulted that encampment? They beat up people, they had pipes, and only one person has been arrested for that incident? Can you imagine if there was leftists or Palestinians, they would be going wild. They'd arrest hundreds. Not only one person. They let them off. And then the next night, Gavin Newsom allowed the highway patrol, and Karen Bass, mayor of Los Angeles, had the police come in and attack the encampment. So, I mean, this is what we're talking about with growing repression in this country. It's not just the Republicans. We have to be clear. The Democrats are complicit in this. In the military-industrial complex, they want more money for war. I mean, here our infrastructure is falling apart. They're attacking education. They're attacking healthcare, and all we got money is billions more for war.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fadi Saba. I'm an activist here in San Jose, the South Bay area, and I was one of the first, or I was elected to the KPFA board the first time they had an election after the 1999 revolt against the total control, authoritarian control by management, by Pacifica management. We were able to win. There was tent city in Berkeley outside the building, the KPFA studios. And at that time, there was a lot of interest in a democratic system, democratic stations, democratic Pacifica. And so we were part of that. Many of us were part of that. And we were able to get the station back and the network back with the new constitution and elections. At first, the first time I was elected was before that actually was done. It was a local advisory board. And now it's local station board because it has, theoretically, more power. It has power for the people, the listener sponsors can help in driving the direction of our station, which is really an important thing. Unfortunately, however, what I noticed while I was there is that some people in management and those who are supporting them were trying to find ways to usurp that community power, which is really important. One example is where the management many years ago, almost actually 20 years ago now, 15 years ago, the management got rid of a committee made up of community and staff, both volunteer and paid staff, and management, where they come together and figure out what programs, because there are only 24 hours in a day. You can't make it 48 hours in a day. There are no more time slots in a day to add new shows, right? There has to be a way to kind of figure out, okay, what would be the best? What do we want? And rather than doing that, they got rid of this committee, the program committee. It was no longer in use. It was gotten rid of by management unilaterally. And the LSB, the local station board, didn't do anything about that. And that is one of the problems that I've noticed with the local station board. I've noticed that the local station board often has been rubber stampers, people who rubber stamp management, and that is a true problem here. Also, it's really important for the community. And again, I am speaking as a community member and as a Palestinian community member, of course. It is really important for us to have our voice in this. This is a community station, remember that. And it is a community network. It's listener sponsored, but that's really people's radio. And so the people should be a part of it. It's not micromanagement, it's just being part of the whole process in a consensus manner. All right, and all of these different steps have been taken away, one piece at a time. And so that is a problem. Currently, right now, one of the issues is Palestine. As everyone knows, there's a genocide. Israel is and has been for over 9 months, actually nearly 10 months, attacking and obliterating people. According to the Lancet journal out of Britain, there's possibly an upward of 186,000 people who've been killed. 40,000 approximately have been accounted for because those who died, were killed, made it through the hospital system, but so many others were not. They were eaten by dogs. They were buried quickly by family members, and so on and so forth, because Israel bombed out living daylights out of the hospitals and all other forms of shelter. So why do I bring that up? It's because the types of programming at times isn't progressive enough to challenge, for example, the news. I called up the news station about a month ago because I didn't hear during the the highlights, in the first 5 minutes of, at that time it was Hard Knock Radio. I was about to watch listen to Hard Knock Radio, and just before that there's the news portion, right? About 4 or 5 minutes news portion. And there was nothing about Palestine. I called up and this gentleman answers, whose name I do not recall right now. And he answers, and I said, well, I'm surprised. Why isn't Palestine? He's like, well, nothing has changed. People are just being killed. I'm like, so out of sight, out of mind. It's like, oh, well, it's still happening, but who cares? Or maybe not who cares. They do care. But let's not report on it because it's not as important right now. It's the same thing over and over again, rather than making sure that it's out there, upfront, all the time. And so the LSB should be able to make these kinds of commentaries so that, we all have some, how shall I put it, some feedback, right? Right now, there is no real way to have feedback at the station, even though it's people's radio, listener-sponsored radio. And so I hope that you will vote for the right slate, the slate that has some awesome folks on it, including Professor Abdul Hadi. Rabab Abdul Hadi is a professor at San Francisco State University, and for several years, many years, the university has been trying to get rid of her every single possible way. And they have been horrible towards her because she is Palestinian. She's willing to stand up to the powers that be and fight for the rights of marginalized peoples, or not just here in the United States, but throughout the world, including Palestinians. And that's really important. One of the things I would like to remind people, or if you didn't know, let you know, she had this amazing program. Again, this is a university, right? And universities are a place of discussing different ideas, different thoughts, right? It's a place where free speech must exist at all times. And this, what happened is through Zoom, and this is during the pandemic period, so several years ago, she had several folks on Palestinian liberation, including Layla Khalid. And because Layla Khalid was going to be on it, Zionists did make a big deal out of it. The university then made sure that it was not part of it. They went through Zoom, they placed pressure on Zoom to cancel it. And so we're talking about, and I'm on Zoom right now, but we're talking about a woman, a professor, a person of color who has been fighting for justice, and she would be an awesome member on this, including the entire slate of hers. Believe it or not, there are progressive and activists in the San Jose area. All right. I know a lot of people, we hear about Berkeley, we hear about Oakland, we hear about San Francisco, right? We don't hear a whole lot about other areas around the Bay, not just San Jose, but Fremont, Hayward. We don't hear about San Mateo. You know, we don't hear beyond those three cities, right? And understandably so in some ways, because Pacifica, KPFA, is located in Berkeley, right? And there is a certain radius that they cover. Even San Francisco does not get the coverage that Oakland, Berkeley does. When I was on the board on the LSB, and I had worked with Eileen Alfender at the time, who was one of the co-directors of the news department, in trying to get a reporter down here in the South Bay. The San Jose Peace and Justice Center offered its space to store the, the microphones, the things that reporters need to be able to get that, a place where someone can write the stories, and obviously not necessarily to be here daily, but on certain events. And for a while, the KPFA news department did do some of that. They did cover South Bay issues, activist issues down here, things that were very important, labor issues, the closure of a very important hospital, regional hospital in downtown San Jose with a trauma center, for example, that serves a relatively poor area. These things were covered, but in the past 10 years, I don't think there's been any coverage, unless it was called into by an average person down here in San Jose, a San Josean. So, which is unfortunate, and I'd love to see that, and volunteer reporters possibly, where there'd be some, a way to train folks to be those reporters, to have actual personnel making it down here. I know Max Pringle was down here, and then he was moved to Sacramento to cover the Capitol beat kind of a thing. So he was the one who was down in San Jose for a bit. And thank you, everybody. And again, don't forget to vote. Rescue Pacifica Slate.